Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to the next of our webcasts that we're bringing you from Travel Weekly as part of our Roadmap to Recovery series. And I am delighted today to be joined by the new president of Holland America Line, Gus Antorcha. So welcome to you, joining us from Miami today.
Thank you, Lucy. Happy to be here.
Great. So, well, now we wrote a story to say you were taking up the reins as president in early July. So some would say quite a tricky time to be taking on the helm at a cruise line. But you've been in cruising a long time, haven't you, Gus? And you've been with Carnival Corporation for a while. So perhaps just for people who, because we don't know you in this market, perhaps you could just
Sure.
give us a little bit of an idea of who you are, first of all.
Sure. I've been now at the helm, I think about 7 weeks, and unprecedented, as as you're alluding to. It's quite a time to really take the lead at any company, but certainly cruise and the effect that the pandemic has had has been quite substantial. But you're also right. I've been part of Carnival Corporation for about 10 years. Prior to that, I worked at a company called the Boston Consulting Group, where it's an advisory firm. But my work there was primarily focused on travel and tourism. I actually did work for Carnival quite a bit. And so at some point, they offered me the opportunity to work in the operation, and I jumped at it. I grew up cruising. I love cruising. And I thought, what a wonderful way to make that transition from a professional service firm to a really operating role. And so I joined Carnival in 2010 and ran onboard revenue for them for a couple of years. And then over time, the role expanded to include all of the operation, eventually new build, guest technology, and various other pieces along the way. And then, as you said, just a few weeks ago, Stein Cruise, which I'm sure your readers and your followers know, invited me to join the Holland America Group management team, and I very happily accepted.
Great. Well, we're delighted to have you. And when we wrote the story, there were some very nice things written about you, Gus. They were saying that you've got great wisdom and competent judgment. And they were saying that was going to be crucial because, you mentioned it there, it's an unprecedented time. And, Stein himself was saying that, your leadership and your experience is going to serve us well as we prepare to resume operations. Now, we know that's now extended out till December 15th. But tell us perhaps what you're focusing on then, as I know all cruise lines are doing, but it'd be great to get your take on what you are concentrating on while you're preparing to get back to service.
Those are very kind words Stein shared. And although wisdom, I don't know in the UK, but in the US, that would make you sound old. So
I know, we don't want that.
Yeah, no. But look, it's evolving. What we knew about the situation, the virus, the pandemic 30 days ago is different than we know today. Was it yesterday or day before? The days are all blending for all of us at home. There's a new test that just got approved from the FDA, from Amgen. It's cheap. It looks like it's reliable with a good amount of sensitivity. And so that might change how we think about our testing protocols, for example. And so it's gonna require us to be flexible, work with the authorities in the various markets. We're a global corporation, obviously, but we at Holland, we're very much a global brand, and we serve a variety of different markets, and each of those markets may be at a different point in time in fighting the pandemic, and so the protocols might be different depending on where we're sailing from.
So it's not just about what you do with your own ships, it's about all the places that you're sailing to.
Exactly right. And it's how we work with local authorities and what that community feels we need to do to protect them. I will say, and so that'll evolve, and the science is going to change, and we will evolve. We will evolve with it. I will say, and I really grew up in the industry inside the operation, and so some of this is very close to me. We very much have as part of our values compliance, environmental protection, and the safety and well-being of our crew, our guests, and the places we visit. And that's very important to us. And so this managing and how we manage in this pandemic very much, I mean, those values that we hold are very much come to bear. We do things, some of the, I'll tell you one short little anecdote. I don't know if you know, but at some point, hopefully we're on a ship together, maybe Rotterdam in Europe, that would be something. But, I'll take you behind the scenes and I'll show you the care and the detail that we go to protect our guests. And so if you were to go into your kitchen, maybe after this interview, you'll notice a lot of right angles in the kitchen. Right? Your stove's going to have right angles. Your countertop on the wall will have right angles. Every kitchen in the world has right angles. We actually don't on board the ships. All the angles, all the equipment is welded, is custom, and then welded to have curves. And the reason's pretty simple. It's easier to clean a curve than a right angle. Dust and grease and muck and whatever. And so, that's the level of care that we go to as an industry to protect, our guests and our crew. And I think the same approach we will take as an industry. This won't be one cruise line trying to outdo the other. I mean, it doesn't serve the industry. And I think as an industry, you will see us over time really hone in on what we need to do to protect our guests and our crew. And there's a lot of work going on. We've outlined, I think it's 6 areas. It's on our website around, the areas we're working on. And there's a lot of work occurring behind the scenes. There's a lot of curiosity too among the agents that I've spoken to, among the guests that I've spoken to. What exactly are you guys doing? And I hesitate to share a lot of the detail because it's evolving. Just the example I mentioned to you around the testing, I could have shared, a great plan we would have had. We test everybody before they come on board. Well, then a few weeks after, there's testing now available in the communities, CVS, local pharmacies.
And Gus, I get that, but that's always going to be the case. And at some point, you are going to have to, I guess, and you're saying you're acting as an industry rather than having a competitive advantage here, and the cruise industry is very, very good at that. But at some point, people are going to have to resume. You've got MSC already resuming operations in Europe. At some point, a US line is going to have to take the plunge and start.
No, you're exactly right.
But it's always going to change.
So you'll see what MSC and Costa coming up now are going to be doing in their markets will likely be different than what we will be doing in the US. Right. And it may very well be different than what we're doing in the UK, because we have to be responsive to what the health authorities and what the communities are comfortable with.
Yeah.
Clearly, if there's a best practice we're doing in the United States for whatever reason, and I've gone through the Costa protocols in detail, if there's a best practice they've put in place in Italy, we're going to replicate that regardless of whatever the local, requirements are. But yes, as we get closer, and unfortunately, we had an extension of the pause, as you saw a couple of weeks ago from the CDC. We had to extend our own pause of operation. But as we get closer to that point we're sailing, there will be excruciating detail, and rightfully so, on what exactly we will do in the particular market.
Yeah. And do you feel, I know now the extension is out till mid-December, are you confident you'd get some cruising away by the end of the year, or do you think it could be extended again and actually 2021 is now more likely?
I have not been involved directly in the conversations with CDC. And again, this is specific to the US now.
I know.
Because, as you said, MSC and Costa are gearing up, and so it'll vary. But I have not been involved directly in the conversations with CDC. I have been in some of the conversations with CLIA. We're hopeful. I think the situation in the U.S. has been difficult over the last, 60 days, because many communities, including the one I'm living in now, Miami experienced a pretty large
Yeah.
spike, but now you see those numbers rapidly decreasing. I mean, we're at a fraction of
Yeah.
the cases we were just a few weeks ago. So, when you think about November, December, that's really a long time from now. And
In
so
the context, as you say, of things
in the
changing week
context
by
that we live
week.
in now, exactly.
Yeah.
So what exactly is going to be happening? I don't know. It's very hard to guess, but I'm hopeful we'll restart. And it may be, well, for us, we canceled through December 15th, but it may be that we are able to start a portion of the fleet sooner than that. And we'll figure it out. I don't know. For Holland, the right decision was, out to December 15th. For other lines, I think the more contemporary segment, potentially shorter itineraries, they didn't feel it was appropriate to go out that far. We skew longer, as you know, and so there's some questions around duration at the beginning when we get started again, and so we thought it was the right thing to do for the Holland brand to go to December 15th. But I very much hope to be operating the holiday cruises. I mean, that's important time for families, and we want to make sure we offer them the ability to celebrate together. So I'm very hopeful we'll be back.
Okay, that would be fantastic. And then, of course, everything won't come back all in one go. Well, that's quite clear. You mentioned there might just be some things operating. You've got to look at duration. So do you envisage, even with a brand like yours, which has got some fantastic exotic itineraries, but do you envisage it being much reduced and maybe closer to home and shorter durations? Will you mix things up a bit, do you think?
I'd be totally speculating. I don't know. In some ways, we just don't know. And we got to go based on the science, and we learn so much every day. But, if you were able to really have a population that, I mean, look at New Zealand, right? It's a bubble. And then they took all this precautions and they got very close. Well, they eradicated the virus there for a while, and then life was very much normal for 2-3 months. In some ways, a longer voyage can be perceived that way, and if we really create a bubble on that ship,
within the ship,
in the ship, that can go for a very long period of time, and it's a bubble. So
but people are still going to get off and on again in order.
So then it gets at what countries are you visiting?
Yeah.
And what are the protocols there? And what are the types of protocols you have for people to go out and come back? And all that stuff needs to be worked out. But if you're visiting places where there's low infection rates, then there's relatively low risk. And the point is, it's so hypothetical right now, and that's the trouble, with my role, because people internally, agents, guests, trades.
We all want to know.
Everyone wants to know specifics, which I want to know specifics too.
Okay. No, I understand. I'm asking you questions that I appreciate. It's hard to answer, but you're the boss, and we want to ask you.
I mean, that's what's on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And given that there's so much uncertainty still, and we understand that, how does that affect demand and existing customers and future new to cruise? Because whilst you can't give any assurances, does it put people off, or are you finding people are just itching to get back booking?
Well, I think, and this is a mix of personal plus data. Like I'll acknowledge some of this is my own personal feeling, but there's some data to back it up. When we lose the ability to do things we've taken for granted, we cherish them more. And the world was used to largely unabated, unaffected travel. We can go anywhere at a moment's notice. We could take these amazing voyages on ships, these exotics you talked about, which I'm very much looking forward to at least partially joining one of those. It's really quite remarkable. We've lost our ability, whether it's a plane or whether it's the restrictions on travel or border. I mean, we've really lost the ability to do that. And so I think when we open, you're really going to see people and I get this from myself, family, friends, the trade, and how they've been talking to customers. I think people are going to relish the opportunity to travel once again. And so I really think you're going to see an uptick in demand. And it's interesting, you've heard different CEOs comment on their businesses and whether it's changed fundamentally or not. And some CEOs are more positive, some are more negative or cautious. I really lean much more towards the positive view, which is we will cherish the opportunity to visit places and cultures and get together again when we're able to do that freely. And some of the bookings suggest that. If you look at, and Arnold made some comments around, the sort of second half of next year, we're seeing a lot of strength. And I think that's the data that gets at as soon as we have greater certainty. And I think just in the consumer's mind, people just, okay, a year from now, the world will have sorted through this. And so I think that's why you see sort of second half of next year, but we're still getting bookings. There's still demand. I think in times of uncertainty, and this has happened throughout my experience in the industry, it's really the past guest, the experienced cruiser that's more comfortable booking. And I think you're seeing that, especially closer in. They've been on board, they know what it's like, they know the care we take on safety and security and health. And so they're like, yeah, that's a pretty good deal. I'm going to go. Right. And so there's, because there's some pretty.
And presumably established, trusted brand plays a part in that as well. If you are going to go on a cruise, you'll go with one that you know of and you've heard of, and you think it has a good reputation.
Exactly right. Holland's been around 140 some odd years, over 145 years. And it was interesting. I saw a video. It's not ready for public release, but it's an onboard talk that some of our lecturers give. And, this brand has weathered other pandemics. They've weathered 2 world wars. We've weathered a depression, the invention of air travel.
Exactly. That's a good point.
Been a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's this brand. We've weathered a lot, and I think we've been, as an industry, but also as a brand, we've been cautious and prudent on how we've managed the business to make sure that we're here when things calm down.
Good. All right. Well, let's talk about your fleet, because you've made some announcements in the last few months around, letting some ships go. But of course, we know you've got some coming in. So you've got four ships leaving the fleet. You've got your new ones, and you've got the now called Rotterdam coming in next year, and that keeps your capacity similar. Am I right? There's no sort of change in the overall capacity, or very little.
I think very little. I think by 2022, when we get the full year of Rotterdam, it's slightly up, but it's effectively, like I said, it's a little bit higher.
Okay, and was that always the plan, or did you let go of these older ships, once the pandemic had hit and you thought, okay, we now don't need the growth, we'll just keep it a little bit more,
right? I think so. There's always been a plan, and I think all the large lines, there's this process by which we manage our capacity. Over time, you've seen ship sales, transfers between brands. And so there was always a plan to decrease some of the older capacity at Holland. I think the pandemic just accelerated the opportunity to do some of that, and so that's why you've seen the corporation take steps across several of the brands to decrease the older hardware.
Okay, so that you, I guess, aren't so exposed with too much new tonnage, because of course new tonnage requires new to cruise, and we were just talking that it's going to be the die-hard loyal cruisers that are going to bring you all through this, I guess.
I think that's right, and I think that's the advantage of a company like Holland that's been in business for so long, but also the Carnival Corporation. I mean, it's a collection of brands that have all their own history and their own, place in markets and positioning. But yeah, no, it's important to think through supply, and how we, modulate that, given what we're seeing.
Yeah.
I think also it's important to note, because I got a lot of letters, good and bad, about some of the ships that were leaving. In particular, there's just so much emotion. I mean, just talks to the history. Everything I've heard from guests and trade and our own shipboard or shoreside team is that the history to this brand matters a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's a real asset, actually, the history of the brand. And so we announced Rotterdam leaving before the renaming of the ship. And so I got a lot of letters explaining to me the history, that there's
you needed a Rotterdam in your fleet.
Exactly. And then I got a lot of good letters when we renamed the new build Rotterdam. Okay. It's also important to note the smaller ships have always played a role in recent history, in Holland's fleet. They allow us the ability to do unique itineraries, which are very important to the brand. And the brand's a lot around the journey and the itineraries. And part of that is obviously the places we visit. And the smaller ships allow both an onboard experience, but as well as entry into certain markets. You can't sail into Montreal with a large ship. There's bridges and there's draft and there's cables, as well as there's markets that are just smaller, that a smaller ship really allows you to serve. And so I think the smaller ships have a role at Holland, a cherished role at Holland. And so it's not just about the scale, because the bigger ships offer scale and a lower cost. They're more efficient. Yeah. They also allow you more space for more features. I mean, you just have more physical real estate to introduce new things that for a portion of our guests are important. So I think we'll end up with a fleet that has, we will end up with a fleet that has some of the larger ships with more venues and more, entertainment options and activities for the guests that want that. But we'll also have the smaller ships that provide the more intimate experience and the itineraries that are just unique to, the ability for smaller ships to deliver. Yeah,
so I think that's quite unusual, isn't it? Because some lines either kind of go where we're a big ship line or we're a small ship line, but you're going to blend the best of both worlds.
That's right. And interestingly, new to cruise, those larger ships do offer an ability to attract some people that may not want a small ship, because I want entertainment at all hours of the day. I want more food options. I want more alternative dining. And so that attracts a segment of potentially new to the brand that the older ships don't allow. So it just, I think the portfolio we're ending up with is right for the brand and given what the brand represents and given what the brand offers to customers. I like the fact that we'll have a portfolio of ships.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And just before we move on from Rotterdam, I know she's slightly delayed. She was due in May. I think your latest announcement was June. Is that still the case, or has there been more?
I have a note on that. I wrote it down. I think it's July 30th, I believe.
Yay, that's when we're having a party.
Yes. We're going to have many parties.
We're going to need one.
We're going to need several.
So okay, well that's great. I didn't realize it was July, so that's a good date to know. And I know you sort of right at the start you said, maybe we'll be on Rotterdam in Europe, but have you got plans to showcase it to the UK market, to come on to the, there'll be agents watching this from the UK?
We are working through that. I very much believe the best way for agents to promote Holland as a brand is to get on board one of our ships. And so I'm working through with the sales team and with the commercial team to make sure we have the ability to do that, both in Europe, and so that would obviously support the UK market, as well as in the US. So those details will be forthcoming, but very important in my mind to have agents experience the product, because then that's really when you're able to, the agent community is able to talk to their clients about why it makes sense to spend their vacation, which is precious, on board a Holland America ship. Okay,
well, that's great to hear. And then while we're talking about agents, I mean, you've recently offered an increased commission. You've got this your best ever offer, I think you're calling it, to stimulate demand. So just talk to me a little bit about the role of travel advisors, how they've been through this pandemic, how you've been talking to them and keeping them engaged, and how important they're going to be in the future.
I think the agents, the travel agent community helped build this industry. They're invaluable to the industry. In the early days, it was explaining what cruising was about in the 70s and 80s. And that, for someone that hasn't been on a ship, that's complicated. Like, what do you mean you can do everything? Yeah, you can. These are resorts. These are floating mini cities. And they've really helped build this industry, and they've always remained a valuable partner. I think critical partner for us, and for Holland. I've spoken to a lot of trade partners, and look, they're hurting like all of us. They're hurting, and a lot of my discussions have been to reaffirm the importance of travel agents to us, to me, and have very open discussions on things we can do to help support the trade. Right now it's hard. We're not sailing. There's no revenue, and we've got these cancellations that unfortunately have had to be extended, and so that puts everybody in a very difficult place. The larger agents that have a more diversified business are faring a little better. I just recently spoke to AAA, and they have all kinds of different businesses, insurance, road trips, which apparently a lot of people are taking now. So they're able, it's a portfolio.
Yeah, they can flex their different,
But most of our agents are travel and are just literally just travel. And many of them are just cruise, and that puts them in a very difficult place. I have been talking through our team, and you see some aggressive offers to really try and stimulate bookings and ultimately commissions. But I've been talking with our team on are there different constructs, different types of fares, potential a non-refundable deposit, ways where we can generate a greater payment sooner to agents. And early days on that, but we have to work together to figure out how we support the agent community, because look, we're hurting, and we're a large corporation, and we have the ability to raise debt, and but a lot of our travel partners are not large companies. They're small to medium-sized companies, and they need support. And I think the governments in various geographies have really tried to support small and medium-sized businesses. But at the end, what we need is to get sailing again, and it gets it all working. But I spent a lot of time with the travel agent community on the phone.
Well, that's great to hear, and it'd be fantastic, I'm sure, for the ones over here to hear what you've got to say, and we'd love to see you in person when that's possible. You mentioned there that their job is obviously, or has been over the years, this explaining what a cruise is. Of course, their job is going to become even more complex now, because it's not just explaining what a cruise is. They're going to have to explain all of, around the risks, around all the procedures and the protocols and things that you've put in place. So their job is going to get even harder, you might imagine.
It'll certainly get harder, more complicated for all of us, because that question around, okay, why is it okay to travel now? And if I travel, why is it okay to travel on a ship? I think what we're going to have to do, and we've been preparing this internally, is make sure the agent community is well informed and well educated, and that means we need simple to understand, easy to communicate materials for for the trade. Because ultimately it gets down to an agent on the phone or a website that you have to give confidence to the customer that it's safe to sail. Now, we wouldn't sail if we would think it's not safe. I mean, it starts from that very fundamental value that I described, and the care and the painstaking detail we go to make sure it's safe. We won't sail. We won't knowingly put a guest, a crew member, one of our ships in harm's way. But how we articulate that to the trade is going to be so they can then articulate it to their customers will be pretty critical.
Yeah, and the reality is that whilst there is still COVID and we haven't got a vaccine, there are going to be incidents in hotels, on airplanes, on cruise ships. I guess it's also not just about the testing and getting on the ship, it's also about what action you take if that is to happen, because I think everyone understands that we're not going to have a COVID-free environment, are we, for some time?
The medical experts would give you a better view, but just what I'm observing in Miami is that at least this community at the beginning, it was how does we can't get it, we can't let the outbreak, it can't happen, you gotta squash everything down, and I think as a society we've migrated to exactly your point. It's in the community, and we've gotten better on how to deal with that, and there's very simple things that we can do to protect ourselves. Wear a mask, wash your hands, and so part of this will be how we live and react to someone getting sick. People get sick today with all kinds of illnesses, and we manage those on board. I mean, you've been on board. It's a small city, and in any small city in any country in the world, stuff happens. And so I think you're right. Part of it will be, okay, if someone gets sick, this is what we do.
And do you think when people get back cruising again, they will have got used to coping in society, so actually it won't feel too strange on a ship? Because someone was saying to me, it's all very well these cruise lines putting all this health and safety and medical stuff on, but is it going to feel a bit medical and clinical, or is it going to still feel like a vacation?
Well, I think we have to make it feel like a vacation. If people feel it's clinical, like you're in a hospital or whatever a clinical environment would feel like, that's how much of a vacation is it? And that'll be why it's so important to be thoughtful of what we announce and what we put in place, because as we learn more, that might adjust. What will social distancing look like, and to what level will we social distance on board? Certainly Europe is figuring this out as MSC starts to return, but what that looks like here, we're not sure yet. But it has to feel like a vacation, because if not, then what's the point?
Yeah. Oh well.
You have to feel.
People need to relax and enjoy themselves still. Otherwise, you're right. They might just as well stay at home. So no, absolutely. Now listen, I'm conscious of your time, Gus, but we talked before. There's all these different cruise lines, and you said that getting on a ship is clearly the best way to understand what each one offers. But just to get away from COVID, I know that's massive, but it's still really important that agents understand the differences between all the different brands and the different cruise lines out there. And I know you were saying that your line is the go-to cruise line for cultural immersion, and you talked about having the best live music at sea, culinary experiences to rival the best land restaurants, and all your engaging talks and activities that you have. So, but if people who are watching this aren't really aware of Holland America Line and why it's so unique and what you do, can you just maybe encapsulate for us what it is that's so special about your brand?
For me, I think it's easiest to bring it to life on particular place we visit, and what we do there to really make it different and memorable for our guests. I mean, I think the easiest place for me to refer to, because I'm most familiar with this geography, although there's amazing itineraries, as you mentioned. The exotics are incredible. But it's really Alaska. So Alaska.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, we are. I mean,
you are. Yeah, it's lovely.
We invented. Again, I didn't know this before, but actually, Holland invented cruising in Alaska, and it was as a reaction, interestingly enough, to air travel. Air travel fundamentally changed the transatlantic, the way people moved across the Atlantic, and that led to a bit of a crisis at the time, and ships scattered, and people were doing Caribbean and world cruises, but Holland figured out there was this place up in the Pacific Northwest and towards the Arctic called Alaska, and it really opened up cruising up there. And I think the way we bring, and it is a spectacular location. It's really quite unique what you see and what you're exposed to up in Alaska. What we're able to offer our guests is quite unique. We have the most itineraries going to Glacier Bay, which is really I mean, if you're going to go to Alaska, you do not want to miss Glacier Bay. We actually got one of those awards is for Alaskan itineraries.
I like the fact you strategically position your awards and I like that. Yeah, I'm really annoyed because I've just got dinosaurs and you've got ships and awards and
ships. I got a globe there, so
I know.
But anyway, I mean, you look at the itinerary and what we offer in the itinerary. It's unique. It's the most itineraries that capture Glacier Bay. We also have, together with Princess, which is a sister line, amazing wealth of unique lodges and land-based experiences, as well as unique tours. And so if you're going to trust somebody going to Alaska, you can trust the fact that if you go on Holland, you're going to be exposed to things that are unique and you can't get there otherwise. And so that's just an example of, when we talk about cultural immersion in our itineraries, and yes, onboard spectacular, and I could talk about that, but I think given our guests and the customers thinking about cruising on Holland, it's really about these itineraries, and Alaska it just brings it to life.
Well, you've painted a fantastic picture there for us. We want to go. So, and let's hope Alaska, the wonderful outdoor environment, and perhaps that will be one of the places that you can start.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Yeah. So I very much look forward to that.
Yeah. Well, we wish you all the best. We can't wait. Like everybody, we want the cruise lines to be able to operate as soon as they can, but we know that has to be as soon as you feel completely ready, as you say. But I'm sure all the UK agents will be fully behind you. So thank you for your time today. It's great to meet you, and we hope to see you, as I say, in person over in London sometime.
I do as well. Thank you for your time, Lucy.
All right. Thanks, Gus.